Agency owners have a ton to think about every single day, from serving clients to growing the business, leading the team, et cetera, et cetera. Then there's the back office grind. Things like reconciling commissions, payroll, tax prep, HR compliance, blah, blah, blah. It's all necessary, but incredibly time consuming. That's where our friends and partners over at Agency Point come in to help. Agency Point specializes in all the details agencies can't afford to ignore: accounting, tax, HR, and legal. They can even handle commission reconciliation so that nothing slips through the cracks. And if you've heard us talk, you know that this is one of the most important things that agencies must do. By managing the back office essentials, they free up agency leaders and their leadership team to focus on strategy, growth, and clients. An agency that works with them told us, Agency Point gave me back 10 hours a week. And now I spend that time building my business, knowing the foundation is solid. If you're looking for a trusted partner who can help lighten the load without competing for your strategy seat, check out Agency Point.
I owned a oil and propane company in Midcoast, Maine that I started out of my dining room and eventually grew it and sold it back in 2022. And I sold it through a merger and acquisition company called Tounge Associates.
Welcome to the Insurance Refocused podcast, where we're highlighting real agent stories and how they are innovating to respond to the changes and challenges happening in the independent insurance industry. My name's Lindsay, and I can't wait to introduce you to my amazing co-host, who just so happens to be my mom, Carey Wallace. Mom, how you doing today?
I'm doing well, Lindsay. How's your day going?
My day is going good. It's been a little busy, but we are recording this early December 1st, and I actually did something pretty fun this morning. I went and mailed all of our staff members mini Christmas trees because we are doing a Christmas tree competition. Who can decorate their tree the best? And I think that's going to be really fun.
Yeah, my favorite part about it is, for those of you that may or may not know, I have two daughters, not just one daughter. And my other daughter is going to be one of the judges on judging whose tree is the best, which she's super pumped about. I'm super pumped about it. I'm not sure the team is super pumped about it, but they're going to get pumped about it, right? So funny.
Exactly. Yeah. Get Mo on a Zoom call. Let's do it.
She's going to love the Zoom calls. For those of you that don't know, Morgan does do Zoom calls, but not for business. She does them on a weekly basis, but she's never actually gotten on the calls with the Zoom with the team, unless she's bringing me lunch and happens to be on screen when she doesn't actually intend to be on screen. So this will be new for her and a little different. So I love that she's getting into the holiday spirit with us, and I know that she'll be a fantastic judge, and I can't wait to see what the team comes up with. We're a bunch of financial people, so it'll be really interesting to see the creative side of us all come out, and super pumped about it. I am super excited, though. We are going to bring a new and different perspective to the podcast today. As you guys know, we are focusing on broadening the perspective, not just with independent insurance agents that are looking to acquire or to sell their business, but all businesses and what that journey is like. So we have invited Matt Porter to join us on the podcast today. Matt, welcome to the show.
Well, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah. So do me a quick favor and just give your background, what your company is, what industry you're in, and a little bit about yourself so our listeners are grounded and understand what perspective you're coming from.
Sure. So my name's Matt. Like you said, I live in Maine. Previous business owner, I owned a oil and propane company in Midcoast, Maine that I started out of my dining room and eventually grew it and sold it back in 2022. And I sold it through a merger and acquisition company called Tounge Associates. And I'm currently a senior advisor with Tounge Associates in their energy side, assisting with acquisitions in the industry. A little bit about myself. I've grown up in Maine, lived in Maine, came from an entrepreneurial background. Grandparents were self-employed, uncles. My dad owned his own oil company back in the day. So I kind of grew up in the industry, and eventually, when the timing was right, started my own business and went from there.
Very cool. So, how long ago did you say you sold the business?
So I sold it at the end of 2022, December 2022. So it's been about 3 years.
Okay. How long have you been with, did you call it, I've been reading it in my head this entire time as tongue, but you said something different. So it's Tounge, you said?
Tounge Associates.
Tounge. So how long have you been with them?
A little over a year.
Okay. So you took a break in there.
Yeah, when I sold, we had been so invested in the business, so focused on it. My wife worked alongside me in the business. After selling it, we took a break. We had kind of set some funds aside, and we traveled. We went on a road trip, hit all 48 states, lower 48.
Wow.
Visited family, friends, things that we've had to say no to during those years when we were really busy and business focused. We've been able to say yes to. So we've been to weddings and birthday parties, and we just visited folks around the country and took a nice break. So it was really nice.
That's really
I love
fun.
that you said you started it at your dining room table, because I can tell you many of our listeners have done the exact same thing. They also, many of them come from a long line of entrepreneurs, and maybe their business they're in today isn't their first business. So
Sure.
let me ask you, what led you to think that was the year that was right for you to sell? Give me an idea of how you and your wife decided, we're probably going to take a look at this, because sometimes you take a look and you don't do it, but what made you approach that?
So this was the second time we had taken a look. A couple of years before we sold it, we also kind of started entertaining the idea. And really the reason why is during COVID, when many businesses suffered, our business exploded because everybody was going home to work. So we were getting phone calls, hey, can you add heat to this room so I can work out of it? Our delivery trucks became much busier just because people were working from home. And when you're home in Maine and you have your thermostat at 62, it's hard to type on the computer. So we had a lot of folks reaching out to us. We got really busy. At the same time, we had kind of hit our peak with employees, and it was getting extremely competitive in our area. Unfortunately, the industry, trade industries, and I think this is nationwide, have really suffered over say the last 2 decades with the push to have everybody go to a 4-year school. So we started losing a lot of people in the trade industries to that. And as people retired out, we didn't have enough young folks backfilling. So I kind of got to the point where I was working in the winter, 6, usually 7 days a week, and on call 24/7. So even though I wasn't, in a truck delivering or in a van working on service calls or installs, per se, I found myself in a truck delivering on weekends and nights. I was in vans helping out the techs, and I was still trying to run the business. So that got me thinking, maybe if we can't hire, maybe I need to look at a company that's bigger, that has more resources, that can meet our customers' needs. And so we took a look at it, decided, we met with Jeff and JT, decided it wasn't the right time. But we learned a lot of information about who we were, what we could do with this business. And we kind of pushed that decision out a year and a half. And it should be noted that it was a family business. So on top of a lot of folks that weren't family, we had our 4 out of our 5 children working there with us.
Wow.
So it was a tough decision, and we'd met with the kids to see if they had interest in taking over the business. And it really boiled down to the business was growing at such a rate that they weren't comfortable taking it over. Just felt like it would be a tremendous amount of pressure in their early 20s to take this over. So In 2022, early 2022, we reached back out to Jeff and JT and got the ball rolling to start looking at a possible sale.
So I have a question.
Sure.
You kick the tires, and I mean, this sounds so familiar to so many businesses that I work with. But you kick the tires, and you said you learned a lot about yourselves. In that
Sure.
period of time that you decided that wasn't the right time, did you do anything specific with the business to maximize the value from things that you learned as you went through the process of working with the broker? Because obviously, I'm assuming they valued your business. They
Sure.
gave you some information and educated you on the market. What were some of the actions that you took, or were there any?
So the initial meeting with them, we talked a few different times. We talked about how the business would be valued, et cetera. We didn't go through the whole process with them,
Mhm.
but those are good questions. So early on in my career with this business, I tried to align myself with different folks in the industry. And actually, one of my old college roommates also is in the industry, and his dad has owned a business for over 50 years in the industry. So he became a mentor to me, and we started meeting. I would say quarterly would be probably pretty accurate, and we'd sit down, have a meal, chat about what's going on. And from him, I learned when he's out purchasing businesses or looking at businesses, what was important to him, and I started focusing on those things early on. So in our industry, it's all about customer retention and touch points. So, we want to get them on an automatic delivery. We want to be able to do their service work for them. If they use propane, we want to have propane. If they own a business, we want to be touching their business as well. So I started
Yeah.
working on those long before I met Jeff and JT. They reinforced how important it was to continue to grow our percentages in propane and automatics. But I would say in that 1.5 year time frame between when I met with them the first time and the second time, we just continued to focus on those metrics. We didn't necessarily make any changes. We just knew we were pointed in the right direction and to stay focused on those.
Yeah, it's super good. Which, for many people, they don't have a mentor. It is unusual in some industries to have people that are quasi competitors actually help each other. And that is not
Right.
true in the industry that we're in. But I came from the tech world, and I can tell you there's never been another tech company that came and mentored us as we were going through our IPO process.
Right.
That's unusual. So good for you that you had that. What about your kids? Did you know, I'm thinking of an agency that I worked with that had unbelievable potential, but the timing and the debt that would have been required in order to take on a business, to be a competitive buyer, even to be a not competitive buyer and just having an internal transition,
Mm-hmm.
sometimes is overwhelming to someone who's at the beginning of their career,
Sure.
especially when it's a fast growing company. Tell me what that conversation and process was like, and were there any that contemplated it, or how did they make that decision, I guess is the
Yeah,
question.
that's a good question. So initially, before we even talked to Jeff and JT the first go around, we met with three of the kids at the time. Three of our boys were working there, all in the service department. Our daughter later joined on the customer service side. But that first meeting, we kind of sat down and I said, "Hey, I need some help with this business. You guys come in, you punch the clock, you do your job, you're very good at it, but then you go home. And if you want to own this business someday, you need to start, sticking around and learning the ins and outs of how to run this business, and put in those extra hours and start helping on the growth side." And they were all for it at the time, and they got into that, started seeing that side of the business, and what it entailed. And ultimately, they weren't really interested at that point. So we kind of backed away from it. That's when we had our first meeting with Jeff and JT. During that first meeting, Michelle and I asked them, a lot of questions about the sales process and how this would work, and, what would happen to the kids, what are their thoughts. Most businesses right now, because of the hiring crunch in the trades industry, are not letting people go. They want to keep that core group together. So we learned a little bit, and then later on, when we met with them the second time, the kids, it was all four of them, and two of the kids expressed interest, the oldest two boys, about moving forward. So we had a few after hours meetings where we sat down, let them ask any question they want about the business, and gave them information that was a lot more in depth than what they were used to, understanding the financials of the business, how some things work behind the scenes that maybe they weren't, had an idea but weren't privy to. Because I can tell you, all my kids grew up in my oil truck. They've been on many deliveries with me, drug the hose, made the deliveries. My oldest boy, during winter break, would go out with me and do service calls.
Nice.
So they've all been experienced on that side of it, but not what goes on behind the scenes, paying bills, hiring, human resources, banking, insurance, all those different things that you have to navigate. So as they ask questions, one of my sons called me I think it was a weekend, and just said, "Dad, I'm going to bow out. That's really more responsibility than I want at this stage of my life." He was 21. And I said, "No, I understand." And then his brother, who was 24, he went about another 6 weeks of meetings and questions. And then he called up and he said, "Look, I don't think I want to take on that pressure, because this is what you built. This is your legacy. This is your retirement. And that's a lot of pressure for me to absorb out of the gate." And just a very mature decision for a young man to make.
Sure.
And here's the kicker. So we go through the sales process and we sell. And 9 months later, my middle son, who is now 22, opened up his own service business.
Oh, wow.
Once he got out and started working for other people, he decided, you know what?
It's
I'm
time.
going to see if I can replicate this. So he
Ah.
started his
pretty
service
cool.
business. He's in his third year, and now my other two boys work with him. So
Oh my gosh, no
Nice.
way. That's
yeah,
That's
fantastic.
kind of a
special.
full circle. Yeah.
That
Yeah.
is, yeah. So when you started working with the M&A advisor, you obviously
Yes.
liked the process, because then you came back a couple of years later and started working for them. But what was that
Sure.
process like?
So initially it was, we had our meetings up front. I provided them with a lot of information about the business, about our financials, about our clients, our customers, customer breakdown. And then they took all that information and they started working on evaluation. And then my wife and I met them again. I think we did a Zoom meeting and went through the valuation, had questions for them. Obviously, every business owner wants more value out of their business than what it's probably worth. So we
Nah.
were excited. We weren't
I've never
super
heard
fun.
that. Yeah, I've never heard that before. Yeah.
Yeah, we were happy that we weren't like way off. We were definitely very close in what we thought we were worth, and what Tounge Associates thought we were worth, and what my mentor thought we were worth. Because him and I had talked
Nice.
about this several times. He tried to talk me out of selling numerous times, but it really came down to my last year in the business. It was 7 days a week. In the winter, it was 80 to 100 hours a week. My health
Wow.
was taking a beating because I wasn't eating good. I wasn't sleeping a lot. And it just became a scenario where I knew it was the right time to make that move and work with them on this. So once we got the valuation back and we were ballpark, we kind of went back and forth with those numbers and what we wanted to see, what they thought was realistic. And once we settled on where we thought things should be, we signed with them, and that got the ball rolling, where they put together a packet that was sent out to numerous companies, both local and nationwide companies. And that's when companies started signing the NDAs, taking a look at us. And ultimately, we had a few people that wanted to make offers that it really was more verbal, but we did get a few written offers. And that's really when the work begins with an M&A, is, when those offers come in. You spend a lot of time with them, you go over the offers and start working on counters and who's the best fit, what's the best offer from that standpoint. So I'll stop there,
Yeah.
but I mean, there's a lot to it, and I'm certainly happy to go further into it, see what you guys want to talk about.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like they really did a lot of due diligence with you guys up front to figure out what you wanted and what was important to you. Did things like your kids working for the company come up during those offers? Like, what were the things that were most important to you? And then what did you end up getting at the end of the day?
Yeah, so obviously making sure our employees, not just our kids, but we were a small business, and we were very, very picky about how we hired, because every hiree that came into Tidewater Oil, we wanted them to be an extension of our family, where we were running this as a small business. So we all got to know each other extremely well. So part of it was making sure that each and every person had a seat at the table, that they would be represented and taken care of. And Jeff and JT made that a priority with all the companies that were reaching out to us, that we wanted to make sure that there was, offers, and people would be taken care of from that standpoint. So that was a huge focus. And then when it came down to it, we had two very, very similar offers. We went back to both companies, asked them what they could do to differentiate themselves. We also had a property holding LLC, so we owned some properties. One of them was managed, or one of them we rented space from. So when we sold the company, we still own the property. So one of the companies came in and said, "Hey, we'll offer you a 10-year lease to be in that building." So some perks came back from that, and that's kind of where it went. But to your point, Jeff and JT, they learned our business inside and out. And people have always asked me, why would you pay that fee? Because in our industry, we get newsletter after newsletter, magazine that just says, call this number, you can work with us direct, skip the fee. And the reality was, I just did not have the time, the bandwidth, the headspace to be dealing with 4 or 5 companies trying to manage this process.
Yeah.
And what Jeff and JT did is they learned my business inside and out. They represented me. They answered a lot of questions without coming back to me, because they knew my business. When they didn't know it, they would call or shoot an email or a text and get the answer. But for the most part, they became, my lifeline to these businesses and helping us figure out what was the best offer. And at the end of the day, and I've shared this with some friends in the industry, when I look at the closing sheet and the fees and the attorneys and the accountants and all the things that are going to come up that you have to pay, that line item was the easiest one to absorb, because I don't feel like I would have got the same value. I think if I had gone direct to the company I sold to, ultimately they would have had a leg up, because I would not have been able to invest the time and energy and understanding, am I getting the best price for my company?
Yeah, not only that, I mean, I think many owners of a business are going through an emotional journey through that process, and having someone who is not emotionally tied to the business advocating on your behalf is priceless in many, many situations. And the sheer fact of not, I mean, you have to run the business and actually go through this selling process, which
Sure.
you can't do both well. Like, it's really difficult, and it's a journey. I fully agree with you that if you have something of value and you're facing whether or not to enlist the help of someone else to help you through that process, number one, they create demand. They can speak to multiple buyers on your behalf, where you might get exhausted after one or two and then just kind of throw your hands in the air and say, I have to do this, and leave money on the table. And number two, they've worked with other people who have walked through this journey to help you with that emotional side of it as well. I mean, there are times, I think, for everybody who's sold a business where they doubt whether or not this is the right decision to go forward. So that advice is unbelievably valuable as well. I couldn't agree with you more. So if there's advice to others that I haven't talked about, that they provided you through that process, that maybe some people don't think about, I would love to hear what that is, because hindsight's 2020. As someone who hasn't been through it doesn't know what those things are, right?
Right. No, that's great. And I can't speak to every M&A company out there, but I will tell you, Jeff and JT, out of the gate, I told them I wasn't looking for high pressure. Because to your point, I still had to run the business and that was my focus. And this was going to be done on the side. It was going to be nights. It was going to be weekends. It was going to be, midday meetings that I could sneak in here and there. There was going to be a lot of things happening. So they became more than just M&A advisors to me. They became part of our team, part of our family. And I could reach out to either one at any time with questions or concerns. And I will tell you, to your point, when you're selling your business, you go through a whole range of emotions. I alluded to it early on, but I started this out of my dining room table and started growing this business. And it was my life for 16 going on 17 years. The choice to sell was difficult. And I don't know that I don't know if COVID hadn't happened, if I would have sold, because we had a pretty good thing going.
Yeah.
A lot of businesses suffered during COVID and had to either sell or close because of COVID. We were the exact opposite, but it also had a negative impact on us because keeping up with that growth became very difficult for everybody at our company. So these two stepped in, became, like I said, part of the team, and that's what you want. You want somebody that's going to treat you like they're part of your organization versus, being an outside person that really doesn't care about you, doesn't worry about the company, and just kind of understands you.
So, Matt, what made you want to come back and work for them after selling, right? Because you probably just could have kept on going to more places. I know you went to 48 states, but there's 2 more. There's plenty of other countries out there for you to go visit, right? You could have just been a nomad the rest of your life. What made you want to come back and work, and then specifically work at this company?
Yeah. So when I was getting ready to sell, a friend of mine had sold a tech company. He provided computer services in our area, worked with like local businesses, hospitals, etc. He had sold about, I think, 6 months ahead of me. And when we were getting ready to sell, fortunately, we were able to hire him to help us out on the tech side of the sale because there was a lot that had to happen. And he kind of gave me some very good advice. He said, have a plan and work your plan, because you're going to go from 80, 90, 100 hours a week, never turning the switch off. Even when you're not working, you're thinking about it, to you're going to wake up and there's going to be nothing there. And he said, get out of the town, get away from your house, go do something, travel, whatever it is. And we took that advice from him. We did it. But he also said, your brain's going to get to a point where it's just going to say, we got to do something again.
Yeah.
And, eventually JT reached out to me, said, hey, I know you've traveled, you've done a lot of different things. Are you ready to do something again? And we had many conversations over a few months. And ultimately we decided I would take this position. And it's a position that still gives me a lot of flexibility. I can do it on the road. I can travel. There are some face-to-face meetings, but a lot of it is just like this, get on a computer, throw your earphones in and do what you got to do. So I still have a lot of flexibility, but it's good for my brain to be engaged. I'm still fairly young, and although I enjoy the nomad lifestyle to a degree, I still feel like I have a lot to give and want to be productive. So.
Yeah.
So I love that. And I think some people don't have a plan, therefore they stay too long because they really can't see what is on the other side, or they can't imagine what would be on the other side for them. And so often it becomes so much of your identity. It's tough to imagine a day that you wake up and there aren't a million emails or people or customers that need your attention. So good for you for having a mentor that actually challenged you to do that and create a plan, which is the bridge until you figured out what the next thing was. I think to me, that's the most challenging part of this whole thing. It's not the price. It's not it is more about you and the
Right.
people around you. So I'd love to talk to you about the people around you because you've said it
Sure.
a couple of times. I know that your kids worked in the business, but also other people. How did you break the news to them? Because you can't really tell people while you're going through it, right? So give me an idea of what that journey looked like.
Yeah, that was tough because, like I said, we had a group of folks, around 20 of us, and we all were friends. We all did things outside of work together. It was just a really close knit group. So to make the decision, one, was very tough and difficult, but I knew that I had to make it, and I knew it was the right time. Um, but once I got into this, I had to be very careful about what I said. I had to be very careful about meetings. Um, I was doing a meeting like this one night at like 7:30, and there was an emergency call, and a tech came walking right in my office
Mm.
to get a part, and I just kind of had to like slam the computer shut. So I kind of cut him off, but it was challenging. My kids knew, my wife knew, so that right there is a quarter of our company, a little over a quarter. And then I had a gentleman that had come to work for me. He has turned into one of my best friends in life. We still do things. We actually just ran a turkey trot,
Nice.
5K
Nice.
together the other day, and he was very important. And I took him off to the side and gave him a heads up early on because I was going to have to lean on him a little bit through this process and maybe funnel some of my workload to him when we got into due diligence with the purchaser and things like that. So he knew, and that was it. And we just had to keep it really quiet. And everybody did a phenomenal job. And then ultimately, once the sale happened, we signed our paperwork. The money was transferred in the morning. And that afternoon, after business hours, I had scheduled a meeting, and we brought everybody in, and I shared the news with them. And interestingly, I thought I'd have a really good read on the people I've worked with, right, all these years. And the one person I thought that would be really upset and would kind of give me a ton of pushback, the minute I said it, he clapped his hands and said, "Matt, that's the best decision you've ever made." And
Mm.
I think it's really good because of where things are going. And then the one person I thought that would be really okay with it was like shooting me daggers and killing me with her eyes, like, uh-oh, what's
Oh
going on?
no.
So I had him backwards. But at the end of the day, the next day we met again, and everybody, I think, had a positive reaction. And we worked hard to make sure the transition went well. Leaving a small company for a much larger company is obviously challenging. Benefits got better, pay ultimately got better, but not the flexibility in that small homegrown feel that we were known for. So it was challenging for those folks, but I still have a good relationship with. I don't see everybody the way I'd like to, but we all still kind of bump into each other and stay in touch.
Yeah.
Nice.
It's interesting how we get it wrong though, isn't it? It's
Yeah,
interesting that the things that you think people are thinking just goes to show you that people are in their own head and they have their
yep,
own way of processing things, and you could know them as well as you think you do, but sometimes they're not viewing it through your lens at all, so
right.
it's super interesting.
One of the
And
other things, real quick on that I would say is that I did agree to stay on with the new company. I stayed on. There was really no end date, but it was get us through this winter because the transition happened in early December, which is a really busy time here in Maine. So I stayed on, and then I think it was around the end of February. I knew it was time. The transition had pretty much run its course. Everybody was settled into the new roles, and we picked a date, and we agreed on it. I got done at the end of March, so I did 4 months of transitional work for them,
Yeah.
which I think was great for my employees that were going to be staying around, sticking on, and also for the customers, because that's a big thing. We haven't really touched on that yet, but I would assume I know, in the insurance companies that I work with, I've developed lifelong relationships with a lot of folks in
Yeah.
these companies. So, like my customers, who I've known some of them for 16 years, I'm sure the insurance folks know these customers just as well. So making sure that they had a platform and a place to get their questions answered was very important to us. And again, the M&A folks, Jeff and JT, they kind of gave us a lot of information on how to walk through this process, what the backside of it would look like. And they were just instrumental in helping me move forward with that process.
Yeah. Nice. Well, Matt, we are so happy they were able to join us today. And I really enjoyed hearing your story. It's hard sometimes when you only know one industry, right? What happens in one industry. Realistically, your story is very similar to the stories of insurance agencies, which are our customers that we work with. So it's refreshing to hear, hey, this is very similar to your industry or another industry maybe that we'll have on the podcast next. And just hear what you went through, how you handled different situations. It's all very similar. So it's refreshing to hear. And thank you so much for coming on and sharing with us today.
Sure. Well, I enjoyed being here and appreciated talking to you both.
Yeah. Thanks, Matt.
All right. Thank you.
Thanks so much for tuning in to the Insurance Refocused podcast. If you enjoyed the episode, please be sure to hit subscribe and leave us a review so you'll never miss us. Want to learn more about how Agency Focus can help you grow your agency? Head to agency-focus.com or email Carey directly at carey@agency-focus.com. If you need to get in touch with me, feel free to shoot me an email at lindsay@agency-focus.com. Thanks so much for tuning in. We'll see you next week.